Hello, and welcome back to Stories with Mr. Faber. I am your host, Mr. Faber, and here is another episode of Adventures of Atticus, Reign of Doom. So, I have to be honest with you, I tried to do a video take, and I had to scrap the whole thing because I forgot so much of my own story, so I had to do research. I pulled up old papers and things like that so I could get everyone's names right. So I've done my research, and I'm ready to tell you the second part of this story. Now, I forgot to tell you last episode that the superhumans were not actually called superhumans. That just came to me in the moment from last episode, but they're actually called Sons of Humanity. That is their name that the humans on Earth called them, that they themselves call themselves. They're Sons of Humanity. The Elysians, the Isaurians, the Olympians, Elysians, Isaurians, Olympians, Elementals, and when the Iranians were alive, they were all considered, and Elysians, that's right, I always forget the Elysians. I probably said them already. Anyway, doesn't matter. So yes, they all are called Sons of Humanity, not superhumans. I'm not using that anymore. I never was supposed to use that, so there's that. The other thing I didn't mention was the White Capital City. You probably remember from the first book that was the city that Atticus helped the women defend against the Gondrolians. That city ended up becoming the capital city for all three planets. And that's the city where Atticus lives with his family, or did live. And it's the only city on all three planets where all races live together. Isaurians by themselves live in the Isaurian cities, and Olympians live in Olympian cities. They don't ever mix except in this white city. Now, every now and then, an Isaurian woman might fall in love with an Elysian man, or an Olympian woman might fall in love with an elemental man, or whatever. The races sort of mix together. And when that happens, their lineage, their children, are called halflings. Now, halflings have both the powers of their parents. And I know what you're thinking, that might be cool, but actually it's not, because their DNA is so weak from both parents that they don't have their full powers. In fact, they barely have the powers. They're actually kind of frowned down upon, and kind of they are really looked down on, and so they are sort of shunned from both societies of their parents. So they can neither live, for example, if there is a child who has an Isaurian mother and an Olympian father, they cannot live in Olympian cities or Isaurian cities, and so they're shunned. And they have only two options to live, and that is either in the capital city or the halfling city. And this chapter is on this halfling city. Now, most halflings choose to live in the halfling city because, first of all, the white city is very, very expensive to live in. Everyone was wanting to live there because they're all wanting to be near some of the wisest and most powerful people in the universe. And so the halflings typically live in the halfling city. Now, the leader of the halfling city is a very feisty, very tenacious young lady named Athena. Athena's mother was Isaurian, and her father was elemental. She was able to, she had wings, very weak wings, just like any halfling, and she had the electrical elemental. She was very much, though, determined to not let either parent down. And so every day since she was little, she'd practice and practice her powers, and actually at the age of 20 years old had become the most powerful halfling, because every day she practiced flying. She had actually been one of the few Isaurian halflings who was able to fly with her wings. Not very good, mind you, but still much, much better than any other halfling Isaurian. As far as her electrical powers, she wasn't able to do any sort of fancy lightning strike from the heavens, but you definitely did not want to surprise her or try and haul her off, because she would definitely electrocute you. So Athena was very, very strong, and because of that determination and strength, the halflings appointed her as the leader of their nation. Athena had a deep, deep love for Atticus. She was basically this person who, anytime Atticus said something, she was like, we should do what he says. We should totally do what he says. She dressed the way he would dress. She researched his history. She did everything she could to get to know everything about Atticus. She would have even taken sword lessons when she was younger, except that her parents felt like she had an unnatural affinity for Atticus, and so they taught her to use the weapons of the whips, which she had gotten very good at. She had never given up on it, because she had spent so much time dedicated to making sure she was the strongest at everything she did. She felt that she wouldn't have time to learn how to use the swords as well. But I mean, she just loved everything about Atticus. Even though Atticus had become very powerful and very, let's say, he seemed less loving. I'm going to put that out there. He seemed less loving over the 400 years from when he was much younger. But still, there was just something about him that Athena could not. She had to do everything that was Atticus worthy, and so she was very pleasantly surprised to find out that the halfling leader got to sit into council meetings once a year with Atticus as they discussed politics and things like that. And so this was her first year. She was only 20 when she was elected, and now she's 20. So she was very excited about this opportunity to meet Atticus in person, as well as show her strength as a halfling. So that is one extra little group in this story that you can hear about, is the halflings. There's another group too that happened only since the Desdemonians. Did I say them? Yeah, because Zeus classified them. The black ships arrived over the planets. And remember, they had these sort of black energy clouds that was sucking people up into their ships. And what they were doing is they were doing sampling. They were sampling the intelligence on the planet and seeing if it was okay to attack. And so in this next song, we have sort of this black teleport thing, and we're going to see what happens inside this teleport, because the teleport actually grasps onto the life force of each of these different sons of humanity. So that might be their like Elysian's intelligence is their life force. Elementals, electrical or water or whatever their abilities are, those abilities are their life force. And so as they get sucked up, they actually have this split-second decision that they can make to free themselves from this teleportation ability. In that split second, they can either proudly cling on to the heritage that they are, and I'm Elysian, or I'm Isaurian, or I'm Olympian, and get sucked into the ships to have who knows what happens to them. Or, in that moment, they can release who they are. And in that moment, when they release who they are, they fall down to the planet calmly, and they become a new race. In fact, this race becomes known after the most famous of these fallen people, the fallen sons of humanity. And that would be none other than Adora herself. And so this race became known as the Adorans, because they were humble enough to release who they were. And when they fell, they lost their powers, because their powers was what was being sucked up, and instead was gifted a new power. This power was unlike any other. This was a power of complete immunity. They could not be hurt by anyone or anything. They were completely impervious to harm, and they were completely invisible to any evil that dared set foot against them. Now, they could not pick up a weapon and wield it themselves, but they could walk around and they could encourage, and they could do something else. This was something that Adora, when she landed, she was not only able to retain, but she was able to give to others, other Adorans, which was the ability to heal. Because these people that had come down to earth had in some form a purity that Adora had, a purity of knowing oneself, of knowing that the most important thing is taking care of each other. And so these Adorans gathered together and formed their own Adoran city. A city of purity, of hope, and of goodness. It was a great, great moment for some of those people who had disappeared, because they wouldn't be disappeared for long. And soon, very soon, they would go to see their loved ones. But it was very hard for them to go because everyone was so angry, especially their loved ones, that going to them, they wouldn't be able to see them because the anger would lead to rage, and rage is not a good thing. It is an evil thing that clouds the mind and would not allow them to see the person that they wanted to see. So, they had to wait. And that's what they did. Okay, I think now you have the whole platform of everyone who is around. We've got Adorans, we've got halflings, and then we've got the sons of humanity and Desdominions floating above, waiting to see what will happen. Let's go ahead and do our introduction of Zeus as he lands on the planet. Hopefully this song will give you a nice, clean perspective of Zeus. And even though he is extremely wise, some would say that he is the wisest on the entire in the entire universe. So you've got these two great beings, let's say. Zeus, the most wise in the universe, and Atticus, the most powerful. And so these next two songs are going to be sort of an introduction so you can get a feel for how Atticus and how Zeus are in this new age, this new 400 years later, how they are. So, a delegation from the White City were told that Zeus and his embassy would be landing soon. And sure enough, they saw a sort of glass envoy that had landed in the city super silently. There were 5 humans on board, and they said, we're here. Zeus is going to be landing the rest of the ship shortly, right outside your city. If you'll please come this way. The delegates were super excited because much like humanity sort of viewed the Sons of Humanity as sort of legendary and mythical, so too did the Sons of Humanity view Zeus and his extreme wisdom. And so everyone was super excited to see this superhero of theirs finally be a reality. And they waited in the night sky. It was nighttime when they went out. And they waited in the night sky, looking to see where Zeus was, looking for one of those stars to start moving and to be one of those not stars really, but a ship. And they waited, and they waited. Suddenly, a person said, I think I see him. And they looked over, and they saw what looked to be a falling star, but was actually not a falling star. It was a ship entering the orbit of this planet. They looked harder. Are you sure? Yeah, look it. It keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's not a star. It's either an asteroid or it's a ship. Yeah, I think you're right. It's a ship. Guys, look, it's Zeus. He's coming. As it got bigger and bigger, slowly they could see the formation of a glass ship coming into view. And it shot overhead. They looked over and they saw it sort of coming around and coming back down again. As it came into the atmosphere, all of a sudden they saw this transformation as this spaceship turned into a giant glass fighter plane that just ripped across the sky again. They sort of walked forward. They saw that this plane came diving down until it hit the lake nearby. As it did, there was a huge splash, and they saw out of the splash came this giant boat ship thing. It was almost like a giant pirate ship, except it was like a motorboat too, flying across the water without any sails on it. As it came closer and closer to the ground, everyone was sort of backing up, thinking he's going to crash into the ground. As soon as the ship hit the ground, though, this ship started transforming again until it became a glass race car that started racing towards the envoy. And it got closer and closer. They're sort of backing up, and they see Zeus in the driver's seat. And as he comes spinning around, he jumps out of the car, and as he does, the whole car forms around him into this giant glass armored suit, and he stops in front of them, and he goes, "I'm here." So, Zeus, he does not use his glass power at all. In fact, all that stuff you saw, that transformation, the ship to a fighter plane, to a water ship, to a car, to a glass suit, that was all technology, because Zeus is so interested in using his mind and developing technologies. He hardly, the last 100 years especially, hardly uses his glass power at all. All the fancy stuff that happens with glass isn't his mind, but the technology he's designed to get things to do what he wants them to do. So this is sort of the new image of Zeus. Super powerful, super wise, everything coming from his mind. So Zeus lands, and he's immediately, "Where is my brother?" And they're like, we don't know. And he's like, "No, I know." And he starts walking. Because Zeus, because he's focused so much on his mind, another power that sort of came out of this focus on mind versus powers like moving glass, was he was able to detect other people, other powers. And since Atticus had a very big one, he was actually very easy for Zeus to detect. So Zeus immediately got the scent of where his brother was, and the delegates and the ambassadors, all of them just started following Zeus to see where he was going. And this is where we get to hear about Atticus. Atticus was in an empty cave. As they approached, Zeus turned to the delegates and ambassadors and said, "You need to wait here. Atticus is so angry, he's going to kill anyone who steps foot in that cave." He said, What about you, sir?" He said, "I'll be fine. I'm his brother." And Zeus walked forward into the cave. He whispered, "Brother, are you here?" He walked closer, and he could see Atticus was sitting there, broken, not raging, but just sad. "They're gone, Zeus. They're gone. My wife who I've known and been married to for 400 years is gone. My 2 daughters, the only 2 I've really had, are gone. What do I do?" "Pick up your weapons, Atticus. They're not gone. I sense them. They're near. They're very near. These Desdemonians that are floating above your planet." "What? These what?" "Atticus, just listen. There are some evil things floating above you, and you need to stop them. You need to get your act together. Find your wife and children, and then stop them. They are taking your planets apart." Atticus looked at Zeus. "It's good to see you again." They stepped out of the cave and started walking. Zeus pointed down past that valley. "But Atticus, I should warn you, there are Desdemonians there. Nothing is going to stop me, said Atticus. He picked up his swords, and he had a sort of a staff thing. And as he walked down, there were these Desdemonians, a scouting party that had landed of maybe 1,000 of them. And as Atticus got closer, immediately lightning just shot down from the sky and blasted a whole bunch of them. In an instant, his swords came out, but instead of using them to cut them down, the swords had fire and ice, and he used them to angle the powers towards them and zapping fire at one, ice at another, and crashing them together to destroy both. He came in and he started swinging around doing his awesome sword fighting things. He was fighting through into the middle of this group. Zeus and the delegates started running forward to help their leader, and Zeus stopped them and he said, "You don't want to go any further than me." And they said, but, and he's like, "Don't worry, my brother knows what he's doing." And so all of a sudden Atticus puts his staff in the air, and you know how he crushed metal together before? Well, now it's metal and air and earth and electricity and fire all coming together, and all the Desdemonians were sort of looking at it because there's this glowing thing, and then all of a sudden Atticus dropped it down. Boom! And it incinerated everything, and the explosion went right up to Zeus's nose, which meant if anyone had gone any further, they would have died. So, as you can see, Atticus and Zeus have gotten way, way more powerful and epic since we last met. But that is where we're going to stop for now. I hope you've been enjoying this. If you have, come back next time. I believe it's Wednesday for another Adventures of Atticus. Until then, we'll see you later.